Welcome. Welcome to those who are just getting on. Welcome, welcome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're so glad that you're here with us. I'm Sam Goldman. I am the host of the Refuse Fascism podcast and the host of tonight's webinar. And today, I want to welcome you to this urgent national webinar, No Business as Usual, Shut Down ICE, Shut Down the Whole Trump fascist regime. We are gathering at a moment of intensifying emergency. The Trump regime is rounding up immigrants in broad daylight, disappearing people, deploying Marines and the National Guard to the streets of LA, threatening elected officials with arrest again and again and again, shutting down dissent and moving to criminalize protest. This is fascism consolidating. But we're here together because we refuse to accept this future. So tonight we're going to get organized for Monday, July 28th. No business as usual, a day to blow the whistle on ICE, a day of righteous disruption, a day to sound the alarm and call people to join mass nonviolent noncompliance and mass nonviolent resistance to shut down the whole Trump fascist regime. Tonight's Zoom is for people who want to organize. It is not for journalists, and it's not for authorities of any sort. If there are journalists that want to talk with us, we welcome those conversations, and you can reach out to press@refusefascism.org to schedule an interview. But for everyone that wants to organize, we are so glad to have you. And tonight, we are going to hear from Sunsara Taylor. We're going to hear from the front lines in LA. We're going to talk about more about what we're launching on July 28th and how that's part of building for sustained nonviolent mass resistance that could make the demand Trump must go now a reality. We're going to get into how you can take action, and we're going to get into to your questions. But perhaps a friend of yours shared this event with you and you don't know that much about Refuse Fascism. Well, I want to take a moment real quick to say refusefascism.org works to unite all who can be united. People from diverse perspectives, different backgrounds, different political perspectives to join in mass nonviolent protest and resistance in the streets and throughout society. We act together to grow mass noncompliance and nonviolent resistance. Millions refusing to go along with the fascist program, making it impossible for the regime to carry out its horrors, impossible for Trump to govern this country, and impossible for him to hold onto power. And refusefascism.org was founded in 2016. And we've continued to have this mission that Trump is a fascist, he's illegitimate, and he needs to be driven from power. And in this period, we're raising the demands, shut down ICE, no military occupation, shut down the whole Trump fascist regime. Trump must go now. So I'm gonna be looking in the chat real quick because I want to see what y'all good people have been saying. Oh, wow. We've got people from Boston. We've got people from NorCal. We've got Philly in the house. We've got Cleveland. All right. Awesome. Well, I want you to continue to share in the chat. We're going to pause it in just a moment and then bring it back on so that we can focus on a presentation. But you can also use the Q&A because that's like an icon on your screen. You can click on it and then you can ask questions, or you can ask via the chat. We're not going to do like raised hands, taking people off the mic, just because we have so much to get through and we want to hear from lots of people. And the best way to do that is through the chat or through the Q&A. So we're so glad to hear, Hawaii and DC and Maryland. Oh my goodness, this is awesome. We are so glad to have you. But I want to stop running my mouth so that I can introduce Sunsara Taylor. Sunsara is one of the co-initiators of refusefascism.org, and I am going to have her come off mute, and we are going to pause the chat just so people can really be able to engage with the presentation Sunsara is going to share, and then we'll turn it back on. And if you have a question during the presentation about something that Sunsara raises, please put it in the Q&A, and then Sunsara can speak to it later. Welcome, Sunsara. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, can you see me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. There we go. Now I can see what's happening too. Okay, really glad to be with everybody. Thank you, Sam, and thanks everybody for tuning in. As she said, my name is Sunsara Taylor, and I'm one of the co-initiators of Refuse Fascism back in 2016. As Sam told you, Refuse Fascism is a movement that unites people from diverse political perspectives, different backgrounds, different walks of life to stand together out of the recognition that Trump and his MAGA regime are a fascist regime. And that in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America, and we need to come together in massive, nonviolent, but sustained protest and popular uprising in all quarters of society until we create the level of political crisis in this country that Trump cannot govern, cannot impose his fascist program, and cannot hold on to the reins of power. We mean when we say Trump must go now. That is our mission. It's our slogan, it's our chant, it's on our banners, it's our tagline, but it's our actual goal. And we need to achieve that goal for humanity's sake. History in the future depends on us doing that. So I want to start by making one point very, very clear. Something that all of us should remain grounded in and take home with us and live and breathe and emanate out to others. Waiting for the elections to deal with the fascism of Trump MAGA is akin to seeing a man collapse on the street from a heart attack. He's clutching at his chest and he's gasping for air. And instead of calling for an ambulance, instead of administering CPR, instead of acting like it's an all-out emergency, instead sitting back and saying, oh, there's no big deal. The guy's got a checkup, a routine checkup scheduled in a year and a half. He'll be fine. No, you need emergency intervention. And the same thing is true in dealing with the Trump fascist regime. Right now, our rights, right now, the lives of millions of immigrants, right now, the future of humanity is in cardiac arrest. It is because of the Trump fascist regime that is moving very, very close to consolidating all-out fascism. If we do not administer emergency intervention, emergency CPR, and get this regime out of power very, very soon, then we are going to talk of the elections, talk of some future change. That ship will have sailed. The lesson of history is that fascism must be defeated before it is too late. Now, what am I talking about by fascism? I mean a change in the form of rule, a qualitative change in the form of rule, such that there are no rights for the people that the government is bound to respect. There is no dissent. There is no meaningful redress in the courts. They are a further instrument of the fascist atrocity, the arbitrary, reactionary power and authority of the fascist regime in power. And we see this far along already. And in this country, fascism comes invested with, imbued with, infused with three major components, which are deeply rooted in the history and the fabric of this country, which is one, white supremacy, vicious, brutal white supremacy. Two, hatred of women and LGBT people, violent, misogynist, revengist misogyny. And three is xenophobic hatred of everybody who's not American, not American born, foreigners, other countries, and immigrants and refugees within this country, and brown-skinned people generally, as Trump is making increasingly clear. So it's a change in the form of rules such that are no democratic rights, there are no rights of the people, there are no checks and balances on the authority of the fascist in power. And the content of the program, that's the form of rule. The content of the program is this, what we've called a triad: the white supremacy, the hatred of women and LGBT people, and the genocidal xenophobia and America Firstism. And I think we have to confront how close we are to the consolidation of fascism. People probably remember when Senator Alex Padilla was brutally assaulted, dragged out of a press conference where Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was speaking in Los Angeles. He was dragged out, he was tackled, he was forced to the ground, he was put in cuffs brutally. And after he was detained for a while, he came out and he said, look, if this is what they'll do to a sitting senator just for asking a question, think what they are doing to the dishwasher, to the farm worker, to the worker, the day laborer at Home Depot. Think what they are doing to the nameless and the faceless people who are not senators, who have no media platform. And indeed, the truth has increasingly come out, the stories have increasingly come out of the outright terror that is being inflicted every day on a massive scale. Every day, Home Depot's swept, Little Leagues terrorized by ICE up in Harlem, New York City, people in Northern California, down in the fields of California, in Southern California, ICE agents with drones, with tanks, with the National Guard sweeping in, mass arresting, chasing people to their death, and then rounding up hundreds in one sweep with their families wailing. Reports of citizens again and again. It would be wrong to anybody, documented or undocumented. But what does it tell you when they're sweeping up citizens alongside and not letting them go for days because they're brown, because they're suspect? This is a fascist program and it's in the early stages. So Alex Padilla said, look what they're doing to me and think what they're doing to others. And we've heard of the conditions now that we've gotten a window into CCOP prison where hundreds were sent, a torture prison where Abrego Garcia was tortured, Alligator Alcatraz, absolute inhumanity, barbarity, a concentration camp where people are surrounded by mosquitoes and bugs, where rain seeps in because it rains almost every day, where the temperature is 85 degrees in tents that are makeshift and temporary. They went up in 5 days and people are packed in. Hundreds in crowded and cramped cells where they have no privacy. They have a toilet in a room with others. They never get outside. They are fed one meal a day, if that, and some of the time there's worms in it. This is inhuman. You would not treat animals this way. And this is human beings, and it's and Trump just gave a massive, and the Senate and the Congress did too, a massive windfall of funds to ramp up the muscle and the enforcement might of ICE and its terror, and of the detention camps, concentration camps that are springing up all over the country and all over the world. So you have this dynamic that's grinding ahead. And meanwhile, it's not just Alex Padilla. It's the governor of California that's been threatened with arrest. It's the mayor of LA who's been threatened with arrest by Trump and by Tom Homan and by the Secretary of Homeland Security. And if we go back to what Kristi Noem was saying in that press conference 2 months ago that Alex Padilla was assaulted in, literally what she was saying as he interjected to ask a question is that she was explaining why Trump had sent the National Guard and the Marines into Los Angeles. And the reason she gave is that they were sent to Los Angeles and they would stay in Los Angeles until this mission was met. And the mission was to, quote, liberate the city from the so-called socialists and communists and other crazy people, as she put it, who are in charge. In other words, she said the military was sent there, the head of Homeland Security, military was sent to Los Angeles to depose the elected government by military force. That is the definition of a coup. And she said that's why she's here. And this is how Trump is acting. He has made clear that the operation in Los Angeles with the military, who are still in the streets, this has been normalized. They are still in the streets. 2 weeks ago, they swept into MacArthur Park at the center of immigrant LA with Humvees, with horses, with all this tactical gear, and they terrorized a day camp with little kids. And they swept in, and the mayor of the city, Mayor Bass, comes in and she says, "What are you doing here?" And they told her, "We are here and you have no authority over us." They said, "We're staying, get used to it as long as we want to, until our mission is accomplished. This is the new normal." That's what they told her. So here you have the regime saying, We are not going to respect the elected officials. We're here to depose them. We're invading by military force. And the president, who has unleashed all this, is somebody who already incited one insurrection and pardoned the insurrectionists and has told you that if you, it said last time around, if you vote for him this time, you'll never have to vote again. He is declaring that he is going to lock in his power and carry out this ethnic cleansing, carry out this remaking of the country, the assault on science, the assault on climate change, the assault on medicine, the assault on the universities, the assault on law firms. I can't go through all of it. The assault now on every media outlet and nighttime comedians, on top of the news outlets. Colbert has been canceled. That you cannot tell me that this is just a coincidence. So this is, he's threatened the citizenship of Rosie O'Donnell, which is a not just a trial balloon, it's normalizing his intent. He said he would denaturalize Zoran Mamdani, the elected Democratic primary winner, who's going to run for mayor if New York elects him. Trump said we will denaturalize, that is, strip the citizenship of Zoran Mamdani and take over New York, and maybe we'll take over DC while we're at it. This is fascism, and it's marching right along. So this is a moment. Why do I say fascism has to be defeated before it becomes too late? Because there's a time when society gets too locked down for people to stand up and meaningfully oppose it and have a chance at unseating this regime. And we are very close to that moment. We're not there yet, but we have an emergency situation. This is why I say cardiac arrest. Emergency for humanity. Cannot wait until the next elections. Cannot wait until the next elections, besides the fact that Trump has made clear he will not respect an election he doesn't like. So here we have to confront. It has been so powerful and so important and so beautiful that millions have come into the streets in protest. It makes clear that the overwhelming majority of the people in this country do not want this fascism, do not agree with it, and want to do something about it. And they've come out and protested. And in some places, people have taken quite heroic actions. In Los Angeles, in particular, people have stood up overwhelmingly nonviolently against the military occupation and terror and against the ICE raids, and have tried to defend the rights and the lives of those immigrants whose lives and rights are being violated. But this does not come close to what it will take. And overwhelmingly, people are not oriented towards the key solution, the key need of the day, the only thing that measures up to what can actually deal with this historic threat and danger, which is very far along. And that is the actual defeat of this fascist program and the removal of the regime. Trump must go now. If Trump is not removed, if this regime is not removed, they will barrel over even the most powerful opposition and protest and resistance, and they will move on many fronts at once, more than the people can possibly keep up with. They have the power of the state. They have the military, the laws, the courts, they have the Senate, they have all this on their side. And yes, the lower courts are still putting some constitutional checks in their way, but the Supreme Court is controlled by a fascist majority that does not adjudicate the Constitution. It has no legal principles that are consistently applied. What it applies, it rules by one set of principles over here and a different set of principles over there. What's consistent is facilitating and greenlighting Trump's fascist program and Trump's executive authority over all the other branches. And this has been repeated. They gave Trump immunity for breaking the law. And just a couple weeks ago, they not only gave him the green light to through the side door, undermine and shred birthright citizenship, which is built into the Constitution and half the states in this country, without outright overturning it, just affecting this through executive order, even though it's obviously unconstitutional. But also, the Supreme Court just kneecapped and castrated the ability of the lower courts to put injunctions on Trump when he's clearly violating the Constitution. They can do it in limited ways, but they can't do it on a nationwide basis, which has been long-standing principle and practice. So we are in a very dangerous place. That's what I keep coming back to. Waiting for the elections, they will barrel over any opposition and they will move on many fronts, and they have the state, which is no match for disparate protests or periodic protests. They need to be removed from power. And that unifying demand, Trump must go now, and that actual mission is a way that people from their different perspectives and their different walks of life and their different areas of concern and all of this can come together and get to the source of this fascist program and unseat it and overwhelm it rather than being overwhelmed and constantly on the defensive in disparate ways. So we've seen the millions, we've seen they don't like this, but they have to change. And we have to wage a fight to change how we are acting and how they are acting. They've shown the potential, but we have to move in a way that's going to transform this. We have to do it by modeling it, and we have to do it by arguing for it. And we have to do both of those things together. Here I want to read a quote, which I think is it's an extremely powerful quote. I recommend that you go and find it on the internet and watch it be delivered directly by the person who said it. It's from Mario Savio, who was a leader in the free speech movement in Berkeley, California, back in the 1960s, sort of an antecedent to the larger student movement of that time. It was advanced most in Berkeley at this time. And this is something that he said. He said, "There is a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part, and you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all." And this is what has to start happening. There has to be growing levels of mass non-compliance with the fascist program, people gumming up the machinery and grinding the machinery of this fascist regime and its program to a halt until this regime is unseated, until it's removed from power. This needs to be nonviolent, but it needs to be massive, and it needs to be connected to the goal of unseating the regime. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what this looks like. I'm going to try to tie this together pretty quickly here, but I realized I wanted to make two reasons why we cannot continue on the trajectory that we're on, where you have massive protest, millions in the streets every month or so, and some heroic acts trying to resist and gum up the ICE raids and other aspects of Trump's program. And the two reasons, I spoke to one of them, which was that the fascist regime has direction and momentum, and it is moving to overwhelm and lock in fascism. And there will become a time, and we don't know how soon that is, where there's no more space for people to stand up and meaningfully oppose it. So that's one reason I spoke to. The other reason we cannot continue on the same trajectory is that we will get diminishing returns from the masses of people. If all people are called on to do is the same, more or less meaningful, powerful, but increasingly routine protest every month or so, you have 1 million people come out or 5 million people come out, as powerful as that is, if it happens in a ritualized way once every 4 weeks or 5 weeks, combined with smaller scale heroic, resistance on the ground, it will become clear to people correctly that that's not sufficient to deal with the threat that is barreling ahead. And incorrectly, people will start to accommodate to the regime rather than continue the resistance. Or even if they continue the resistance, it will have less and less meaningful effect, and it'll be more and more ritualized. So I'm not saying this to diminish the protests. They've been very important and they show our power, but they have to be transformed into a non-violently, popularly uprising force that is consistent and persistent and continual in many spheres of society, gumming up the machinery of this fascism and grinding it to a halt until the regime is removed, if it is to have effect. So the second reason has to do with the diminishing returns of continuing on the same trajectory among the people. So I want to close by talking about, what does this look like? How could this be achieved? Well, I want you to imagine, I saw in the Revolution Nothing Less show, which I co-host, we put on a video of a group of hospital workers where a gardener, a landscaper, out front of the hospital was chased down by ICE. He ran into the hospital for shelter. And these were people just going about their day, not going to a protest, going to work. They're in their scrubs. They see this guy come through. They see ICE come after him, and they just stood in the way. And they did it on the spot. They got together without a plan, and they just rose to the moment. And you see them, it's very heroic and courageous. And they just say, you can't be here to ICE. You got to go. Take your hands off this guy. And one of the women jumps in between ICE and the gardener. Now, they did not succeed in preventing him from being taken. But I want you to imagine if instead of just 4 or 5 of these people, if they'd had whistles and they blew the whistle, and everybody knew that when you hear the whistle, you go running. That means there's some fascist shit going down. That means immigrants' lives are under attack. That means there's a danger, and you need to go stand with those because somebody's blowing the whistle because they know it's wrong and they want to stand up. And imagine if people had come and everybody knew what that whistle meant, and they'd come from the waiting room, and they'd come from the cafeteria, and maybe they'd come from some of the other operating rooms where things weren't going on. And they came, and instead of 4 or 5 people there had been 100 people or 300 people who knew that's what it needs to be, and they were overwhelming what ICE was doing. Imagine if this was happening in all quarters of society, everywhere ICE showed up, in the schools, in the fields, everywhere. And it was those in the organized networks among immigrant rights organizations and their supporters, but also more broadly, everybody who heard the whistle. And people were increasingly connecting this: shut down ICE, shut down the whole fascist Trump regime. Trump must go now. But also imagine in other spheres, if librarians and teachers, instead of conceding to book bannings and taking the books off the shelves and out of the classrooms, brought them back in. Not just 1 or 2 here or there, which would be easy to crack down on, even if it's righteous, but thousands of them, networks of them across the country in a way that got out of the control of the regime and delegitimized what they were doing. Imagine if doctors and medical workers were refusing the new anti-scientific vaccine regimens and giving out the vaccines anyhow, or refusing the abortion bans, especially when women's lives were on the line, and giving the abortions anyhow, and again on a mass scale. Imagine non-compliance, nonviolent non-compliance in every quarter of society, combined with increasing resistance that stirs the air and disrupts the normalcy and raises the demand. Trump must go now. This is something that we have to be, and imagine also if every act of repression against people who are standing up was met with more people standing up and was used to rally even more people to have their back. This is the kind of dynamic that needs to start to take hold. And you can see this is not just like a, I wish it would happen. Millions have presented themselves, and we see in microcosm all over society people acting heroically in these ways, but it's on a small scale. If this was to take hold quickly, the way that the George Floyd uprising took hold in a matter of days and then spread and ripped throughout all of society, and everybody started taking initiative in relationship to it, sports teams and tattoo parlors and everybody in all their walks of life came into that struggle in different ways. That shows the potential, which is even greater, because this is a question that touches on this white supremacy and police terror, which Trump will ramp up, but also touches on many other questions in every aspect of society as well. So we need that kind of dynamic to take hold. And finally, July 26, 20 through 28th, these next days of actions, which we chose because they coincide with when birthright citizenship is scheduled to expire, depending on what the courts end up saying. But according to Trump's measure, and the Supreme Court ruling, they were on track to expire there in half the country. We'll see if that actually gets interfered with by another court. It's unclear to me quite where that's landing yet. But on these days, in any case, we want to step up our organized protest that is modeling this disruption of business as usual. And we're calling for noise demonstrations. I think Sam or Coco will talk more about this later. On the 28th, that's a Monday, at lunch hour, in front of ICE buildings, making noise, disrupting the calm, disturbing the air, raising these demands: shut down ICE, no military occupation, shut down the Trump fascist regime. Trump must go now. And at 6 p.m. in the evening, noise demonstrations in the neighborhoods or if you're, pots and pans and whistles, spreading the whistles while you're doing this at lunchtime and in the evening, spreading these networks, popularizing what they mean. But also, if you recall during COVID, when there became at a certain point evening noise making out of thanks all over the country, people would bang on their pots and pans, scream out their windows, play music. We want that to start to take hold. And we're going to model it on that Monday night, the 28th, making noise in neighborhoods and in public places where we're calling on people for 15 minutes to make this an ongoing routine so that people, some of them will say, I know Trump's bad, but I'm trying to watch TV. I know this is good, no good, but I'm doing something. No, we can't have business as usual while fascism is marching on. They're stealing our neighbors. They're stealing our rights. The future is at stake. You have to stop your business as usual. We have to disrupt people's addiction to convenience, as one organizer put it recently. And we need to get ourselves and others out of their comfort zone and spark and inspire the kind of protest and resistance nonviolently that is needed, that could come together to create the kind of political crisis where Trump is driven out. So there's a lot more. What we are painting as a picture for the 26th, the 28th is small scale still, but we're trying to think about things that start to model the kind of dynamic that we need. We need you guys to take part in these actions, but also to be working with us to think of and to inspire and to popularize where people do the kinds of actions that can get us on a different footing. And by us, I mean the millions in this country who don't want fascism. So I think I want to end there, and I want to thank you for tuning in, and we'll get into this further as we go forward together.
Thank you so much, Sunsara. I want to now welcome, I see he's here, so this is great. I want to welcome um, Alfonso Morales, and we will turn the chat back on. So if you want to share thoughts, share your questions, that would be great. I'm going to have Alfonso Morales is going to join us. We're going to talk a little bit more about what is happening in LA. Oh, wonderful.
Hi there, am I
Thanks.
on?
You are on and we can hear you and see you. Thank you so much, Alfonso, for joining us. Everyone, Alfonso is a immigration lawyer and um, a member of the organizing committee for Refuse Fascism LA, and we are so glad to have someone on the front lines in LA right now talking to us. So I want to start, Alfonso, with what is happening in your perspective. What is happening now? We've had the National Guard, we've had the Marines on the streets of LA as an occupying force now for some time, and it kind of gets lost in the news stories. And I'm hoping if you can tell us a little bit about what that's been like in LA, and what our immigrant siblings are right now facing with this ramped up ICE terror.
Well, it's been quite shocking ever since the military through the National Guard got here. I remember going to the immigration building that day. I happen to go a lot just because I do a lot of work there, right? And there were Department of Homeland Security officers dressed in blue with German Shepherds. And I was just thinking to myself when I saw that, like, is this really necessary for them to have that show of force? And it's what, we've been talking about as a group and as a community is they are trying to normalize this police state so that that is something that we are used to watching. And it's not something that we should be used to watching. When you walk in now as well with the National Guard and the Marines being there, you have about a line of 12 people of soldiers with M16s and complete camo gear from head to toe. And one of the people that works there told me that they have a button they can push, and they have 200 personnel there that can, at a moment's notice, be on site. And if you think about it, what has really happened to cause that response? There's a history of police brutality in Los Angeles at times. And I say to them, I don't think the LAPD or the LA County Sheriff need any help. And I really don't think so. It's more than that. So you got to start questioning and wondering, what is it? What is going on? What are they trying to do? And I think they're really trying to make this a systematic thing where we are accustomed to seeing this, and we can't allow this to be our new norm. We have to say, get the military out of here. They're not supposed to be policing us. They're trained killers. They are trained to kill people, and you should never be using them on your own people. And not only that, but there has not been a reason to deploy them. I told somebody I've seen more violence or more activity after there's a soccer match in Huntington Park, than what I was seeing when they decided to deploy them. And then when there was, unfortunately, the floods in Texas, I don't think they had the same response. And I'm wondering, what is really going on? And I think everyone should be saying that, and everyone should be looking, because it's not an immigrant issue. This is what I keep telling people. This is a fascist issue. And then the first time I heard it, I was taken back by the word, but you have to look into it, right? And it's not that hard. Fascism is, you think there's a dictator involved, and you believe that there should be one person who's basically making the laws, interpreting the laws, and enforcing the laws. And that's not what we have in this country. We have, three checks and balances. We have the judiciary that's supposed to interpret, Congress is supposed to make it, and the president is supposed to sign and execute, right? But he's trying to make that all into one. You guys remember when the executive orders were going on with Obama? And oh my God forbid he, issue an executive order. But now this is the way they want to govern, because when it comes to birthright citizenship and he tried to do it with the executive order, it's in the Constitution. And there's a process. You have to eliminate that. And there's a process. You need 2/3 vote. But no, they want to do it through executive order. And then they have the audacity to tell the Supreme Court during argument that they disagree with that part of the Constitution, and they're seeking to change it. And that's why they're not following it. And I'm thinking to myself, as an attorney and as a citizen, and I hear this, wait, aren't you supposed to follow the law? And if you want to change it, but follow it until you change it, because that's the law. And the most common principle, the most basic principle of being a United States citizen, it's on the naturalization exam, is the rule of law. And the rule of law is no man is above the law, includes the president.
Thank you. I really, appreciated what you were saying about how this is unfolding and how this connects to what they want to do everywhere, right? If they are not stopped, right? And I guess I wanted to ask two connected questions. One is, you're an immigration lawyer. The terror that ICE has unleashed has just been ramping up and ramping up. And I was hoping that you could share some of what you think that people need to be paying attention to, what people need to be understanding about what is being unleashed, and the resistance that you've seen in LA, that you believe is a seed of something that you hope could spread.
Well, they're going on the street and they're picking up people that are of color that fit a certain profile. And this is not a secret, because they said it. I forget the last gentleman's last name. I think it's Tom, and I think it's Human. I don't remember. He's the one in charge of the deportations. Yeah, the borders are. So he said it. He said, we're allowed to profile someone, and based on how they look and also where we find them. And this is exactly why there was an injunction issued, because you're not allowed to do that. You can't do that. You can't believe, oh, because they're a gardener, that's their occupation, and they look Latino, that we're gonna be able to just arrest them. And I had a situation where I had 5 cousins that were gardeners 2 years ago get pulled over, and they were put into deportation proceedings. And the judge in that particular case, well, 4 of them were PD'd, which meant they were issued prosecutorial discretion. The last one, the TA did not want to allow that to occur. So then I filed a motion to suppress. And when I did that, the judge reviewed the case on the merits and said, you know what? I don't see why these gentlemen were pulled over. This is exactly what you're not supposed to do. And this is what's going on. And you need to pay attention because this is being used on immigration right now, but then it's going to be used on other things where they're going to be racial profiling people. And it's not just going to be happening to the Hispanics or the Latino population. It's going to be happening to other people. And we have to be in this together because, and even like the people that are gun-ho about America, great. I'm gun-ho about America too. This is not an anti-American movement. This is a we love America. We love the principles it stands for. And what I'm starting to see is people say something, right? Because and I think it was talked about earlier, if you see something, you have to do something because you can't allow people to be profiled just like that in the streets and no one's going to say anything. And this is what happened during Nazi Germany, and people, oh, it's none of your business, it's none of your business, don't talk about it. Or some people went as far as to, we're on your side, oh, they don't have their papers over there. And there's a concern that something like that would happen, right, with Latinos who think because they have the right paperwork. And then look at what's going on. They're changing our laws. They've made it where they've okayed U.S. citizens to be deported. They made it where it's okay to send people to a third country that has nothing to do with their case. And why is this important? If you remember the case from El Salvador, that gentleman had a deportation order, but he had a withholding order within the same order, which that guy Miller forgot to state when he was trying to lecture people during a press conference. And what that order meant was that they could not remove him to El Salvador. And what did they do? Send them to the one country where they're not supposed to send them. The reason that's concerning is there are a lot of people that have these withholding orders. And I actually went today with one of my clients, and she wasn't a client before, but she's like, attorney, I need to go here and I don't want to go. And she's a withholding type of client from Honduras. So now with the new laws that or cases that have passed, she was concerned that they would try to deport her to the Sudan or Libya or some other third country. And that's a reality that and now they're starting to see people every 6 months. Before they had to check in every year. Now they have to check in every 6 months.
I left myself being muted. I'm sorry about that. I think that, what I just to repeat again, that what's happening in LA is coming for the whole country unless we stop it. And on the flip side, if the resistance that we've been seeing in LA of the people, coming out in hundreds to nonviolently defends the rights and lives of their immigrant siblings, if that spreads and that strengthens so that there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people coming out and saying shut down ICE, shut down the whole regime, we can imagine, I think, this leap to mass noncompliance and mass nonviolent resistance spreading across the country. And I know that in LA you've done very, very powerful actions. You've done the CCAT action that you participated in, where you did the human installation of the disappeared. You've had the posters that you've been getting up of the disappeared. And I wanted to just give you an opportunity to say if there's any upcoming plans. I think that there's a plan for Saturday, the 26th. Maybe you want to share something about that.
Correct. On the 26th, we're going to be gathered at Placita Olvera, and we'll be there to be in community and also to create awareness, right? And we also have volunteers currently going out to Boyle Heights because we'll be marching through Boyle Heights. The idea and the hope is that people will join the walk and that the numbers will increase. And this is something that needs to be done. And I try to be as involved as I possibly can. I was actually one of the actors for the disappeared because it doesn't matter who you are and what your stature. You need to get involved because and let me put it out, and not that I have the audacity to say this, but I'm going to say this just because I want to send the message out there is why we have to show up. Gandhi led his marches. He showed up. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. showed up. He led his marches. They didn't stay home and let other people do it. So we as leaders have got to show up. And I've been on the school board in Linwood Unified for 20 years, and that's why I consider myself a leader. But I think that we need to show up for each other. We need to lead by example, and we need to be there, because you guys, if we don't do it, who is? You know, sometimes people think someone else is going to do it. Someone else is going to do it. No, it's got to be you. I said we need ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And you need to show up on the 26th. You need to show up at the follow-up marches and the follow-up events, because they're not going to go away. They're using every excuse they can, even when it's tragic, like the Border Patrol agent that got shot in the face in New York at the park. And now all of a sudden, we had a post today that they're going to go to every Democratic-led city to unleash ICE, is what they're saying. And they're saying it, they're not even hiding it, guys. They're saying it in these words, like they're going to unleash ICE in the Democratic cities to make them pay for their years of inconsistent, you know, sanctuary city type policies that have allowed these people to be here. But you have to remember something. They said they're going after the criminals, and they're talking about the criminals and the criminals. 80 to 90% of the people being detained have no criminal history. That is a fact. And they're not even going after people with arrest records and strategically going after them. They're picking up people as they're working, as gardeners, as construction workers. And I'm working on motions to suppress that and hopefully get those cases dismissed, because it's got to stop. And, you know, thank God that the ACLU has filed some actions, and so have some of the cities. And then if you file the actions, you know, beware of President Trump's wrath, because how dare you, you know, go against what he says. And, you know, we can't be intimidated. We can't be scared. And, you know, we're going towards a time where, well, aren't you afraid of what can happen to you? This is much bigger than us as an individual being afraid of something happening to us personally, because you have to understand this country is young, and we have to be present, because the people that are to come should enjoy the same rights and liberties that we enjoy, the rights that people have died for. And I think that it's the most American thing that we can do, is protect our Constitution, one that our president says he doesn't understand or believe he needs to do.
Thank you so much, Alfonso, for taking the time to share with us um, what is going on in LA and what your plans are. And we've been sharing in the chat where folks can learn more and see what the chapter is doing and connect with your work. So thank you so much, Alfonso.
Thank you. Appreciate the time, everyone.
And I want to welcome Coco Das. Coco, I am having some issue with sharing this, so I'm gonna just have you. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Keep talking. There we go. Now we can see Coco's beautiful face.
Okay.
Coco Das is a national leader of Refuse Fascism, and we are so excited, Coco. Your action in New York City today was so awesome. And if folks didn't see, Coco participated along with many others in a speak out in front of the Ed Sullivan Theater in New York, saying Colbert stays, Trump must go. And Coco is going to talk a little bit more now about what we're launching on July 28th.
Yeah, so July 28th, we're saying we are in an emergency situation. You heard from Sunsara and Alfonso on just, you know, a few dimensions of why this is the case, but we have to start launching at no business as usual. No more business as usual. Sunsara made this point that, you know, millions of people have showed that they do not want this, but those millions also need to change. The ordinary people who are out there who, you know, are horrified by the future that's being presented to them, they have to step out. I saw somebody, you know, put in the chat, courage is contagious, and we have to start modeling that in a very sustained, you know, constant, daily, weekly way. So I want, you know, people to imagine if this trajectory continues of all the things that Trump has been able to do in since June 14th, when millions of people were in the streets. You know, the ramping up the ICE terror, then the 10,000 more agents are going to be hired very soon. Holman today saying, you know, they are vowing to crush sanctuary cities. Los Angeles being used as a test case for this. Imagine if we let this go on, certainly into 2026, what is going to happen to our rights and the lives of immigrants and anyone who is a target of this regime. So we are launching a different way of struggling, where it cannot be that we wait for another protest in a month, which is very positive. We need those periodic, you know, monthly protests happening more frequently, where millions come out. But we need to call in people in every corner of society to actually stand up in nonviolent resistance and noncompliance that they are doing on a daily basis. So noncompliance is the act of refusing to cooperate or comply with requests, demands, and orders that come from the fascist regime, and they might, you know, come in the form of Trump's bullying threats, or they might come in the form of very, you know, reasonable sounded, oh, this is just the policy now. No. And I made this point today when we were out standing up to say, no, you know, Colbert, the Late Show must stay, and it's Trump that needs to go, that it is not enough to just say, this is terrible. We actually have to stand up and say, no, this cannot happen on our watch. We are not going to accept it. It's when large groups, entire neighborhoods, cities, entire societies, which is our goal, to have society-wide non-compliance, refusal, and mass protest in the streets day after day, demanding Trump must go, not stopping until the regime is removed from power. It's all of society refusing to take part in this, and people from all walks of life disrupting business as usual, grinding the machinery of this fascist regime to a halt. And, you know, just imagine if, you know, when school starts in September or the end of August, massive numbers of students walking out, professors, you know, refusing to teach because, you know, this fascism is intolerable, what it is doing to education, and we are not going to participate. Imagine, you know, not just a handful, not just dozens, but actually hundreds of people showing up to a place where an ICE raid is happening, and overwhelming ICE's ability to violate people's rights and lives in that spot, in that moment. Imagine, you know, producers, writers, comedians, imagine audiences of late night shows, everybody going in with a t-shirt that says Trump must go now, you know, and then, you know, imagine like all of us, millions of us flooding the streets with our righteous fury and love for humanity, and what a difference it would make to impede this regime from implementing its program, really getting in their way, you know, with our nonviolent resistance, and making it impossible for Trump to govern and impossible to hold on to power. So on July 28th, we are calling for lunchtime and 6 p.m. noise demonstrations. Lunchtime is the whistle protests at ICE detention centers, federal buildings, and immigration courts. This is part of shut down ICE, no military occupation, shut down the whole Trump fascist regime. Trump must go now. So at lunchtime, we are showing up at these centers of ICE Gestapo and blowing the whistle, disturbing the air with loud, defiant whistle rallies, and demanding shut down ICE and demanding Trump must go now. And then at 6 p.m., And those are 1 hour protests. And then at 6 p.m., going back out for 15 minutes with pots and pans, car horns, whistles, music, making a joyful but defiant, angry noise that cannot be ignored. And Sunsara referred to during COVID, when there was a shift change at the hospitals, it became a societal thing where people would open their windows and bang their pots and pans in appreciation. What if every day at 6 o'clock, people were banging their pots and pans in defiance of this fascist regime? And we're calling on people to do that again on Friday and continue that every week, and building up strength and defiance and making this a launch of a new level of resistance where ordinary people, millions of people, are brought into the ways of using the whistle as an actual tool to stop an ICE raid, not just a symbol, of coming together in small groups or large groups to actually develop the networks and develop the forms of nonviolent resistance that can be sustained, building up to the time when millions of people are in the streets day after day demanding Trump must go now.
Thank you so much, Coco. And I just want to point out for those who are looking at the visual aid, so it's capturing some of the elements we're looking at. So there's, in addition to blowing the whistle and spreading the whistles and getting that rapid response going that can be replicated across cities across the country, there's other ways that you can disrupt visually as well. And these are some, the top photo over here is from Tucson, Arizona, and the bottom one, or they're both from, these both I think are from Tucson, Arizona. It was also done in LA outside the federal building. This is the human installation we were talking about earlier, of the disappeared in CCOT. And yes, whistles and them being a tool. You hear the whistle, you go towards it. You defend the rights and lives of your immigrant siblings and anyone being targeted by ICE. And when you see Trump's ICE thugs, you're blowing the whistle and you're saying no. And on the other side, are the pots and pans element for at night, and their images from the movement that was part of driving out the fascist Pinochet, and they took their pots and pans out at night, and the bottom is an artist's depiction of one of those protests. And those were relentless actions. And that's part of what we're building. And so we're gonna get into more tools for you to join this effort. But before we do, I just want to stop and say what you're hearing tonight, the truth about what this regime is doing, the truth about the emergency moment that we're in, and the vision for how we can stop it, a real strategy to win. You're not going to hear this on the news. You're not going to hear this from Democratic Party leadership, and you damn sure won't get it without a determined, fearless movement of people acting with courage and conviction who refuse to live in a fascist America. But building that kind of movement takes resources. Refuse Fascism doesn't have corporate sponsors. We don't have multi-million-dollar grants. We have each other. Right now, we're calling on you. If you believe that we need to shut down ICE, if you know in your heart that Trump must go now, to donate generously. We have a donor who's going to match all donations up to $500 if people give tonight. So drop what you're doing for just a second. If you're also cooking while you're listening to the webinar, put the spoon down and pick up your phone and go to refusefascism.org/donate. You can scan the QR code. You can Venmo refuse-fascism. I'm sure that there's someone putting information in the chat for how you can donate as well. If $25 is a reach for you, give 25. If you can give 100, do so. Whatever you can give $5, $10, it makes a difference. It's part of taking that step and making a commitment to make real the demand Trump must go now. This isn't a charity. This is about fueling the kind of mass sustained resistance that could really make history. So it's the kind that's needed to drive out this regime and do so now. So, as we regularly say, if not when, now, and if not us, who. So I'm going to give you a moment to scan the QR code, to go to the website, or give via Venmo. All that you can give is appreciated, and we'll go to work right away in projecting these demands and projecting this movement that needs to grow and spread. And I want to thank everyone who's already given. And in the link in the chat, I see the links. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thanks to everyone who's contributing, and we'll keep you updated as we go through the rest of the program. So, you want to know how you can act. We're going to break down how you can host an action, how you can join an action, and how you can amplify and spread this movement. There is another QR code for you to find or host an action. And Coco, please jump in at any time if you want to say anything about anything.
Okay, so if you are you will be able to see very soon which cities already have actions planned. So you should check the website, starting tomorrow, and see, can you get to an action that's near you? But if there is not an action near you, then we have tools for you to host an action, and these can be very simple. The basic call for July
Oh,
28th.
sorry. I realized here's the slide with some of them.
Okay, great.
Some of the
So
actions.
we know that in New York City, 2 p.m. outside the New York City Immigration Court at 26 Federal Plaza. DC has the locations, Atlanta, Boston, Chicago. LA will have actions up on Saturday. And, we'll keep adding as people put in their locations.
One thing sorry, Coco. One thing I
Go
just
ahead.
wanted to point out is you can see at the ones that are developing, there's the lunchtime and then there's the evening for each. And some are still being developed, and that's welcome. People are working together and figuring out what would make the most impact in terms of no business as usual to raise the demand Trump must go now in their area. So that is welcome. There's a Seattle action that came in after I made the slide. So Seattle, we know you have something planned. Sorry, Coco.
And then this can give you ideas for if you are not near these locations, where can you call something in your town? And then we will help you publicize it. We will help you get the word out so that other people can find you. And, there are resources on the website, signs, you can order whistles, and, we can help you to give to amplify the slogans, the 4 slogans for this day, and launching the no business as usual, and then getting people organized in your area so that you can continue calling them back on Friday, calling them back into the streets the next week, building up those networks. So use that QR code to sign up and host an action. If you have a question, send us an email. We'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, we'll definitely have a little bit more about organizing shortly with phone numbers and everything like that for folks. So if you're like, I'm definitely going to need help, we got you.
Okay.
I wanted to share real quick. I wanted to share a little bit of today's action Coco, as an example of the type of action that is projecting noncompliance, that's projecting mass resistance, and that everyone has to use their voice and that we can't back down. And I want to share it as well as an example of how we can build and grow and spread this movement through our action. On the slide, you'll also see a little bit of information about the LA action happening this Saturday and an example of a banner drop. You know, just thinking about ways that we can build this and spread this movement, not only just building for Monday, but building for really the kind of relentless mass resistance that's needed. So this was again, CBS canceled, Colbert and Refuse Fascism NYC was calling out collaboration, you know, that this cancellation was collaboration with fascism. And you know, at the protest, I could hear Emma, I could hear you as well, making sure that people knew, everybody there knew where to be July 28th. So that's another way to grow and spread through action. And then here's the information for the LA action on Saturday. As Coco mentioned, we have resources for you. So what you'll see on the screen are just a taste of resources that we are gathering to make sure that this can really launch the relentless, no more business as usual actions that are needed to shut down ICE, to shut down the whole Trump fascist regime. So there's an organizing toolkit. Deborah, Coco, if you can do me a favor and put in the chat the link to it. It's a view only document, but you'll have links to resources such as, you know, flyers, social media graphics, guides on how to record a protest, how to spread it on social media if you haven't done that before, what to do before, during, and after your protest, how to get press, how to de-escalate, how to recruit people and spread the word, along with signs and posters and banners and more that you can either use as examples to make your own, or that you can use to print, you know, either at home or at a shop, depending on the sizes. We also have flyers for you to get out everywhere. Soon we will have posters to put up in your neighborhood. We have a volunteer that's designing that. So thanks. You know who you are if you're listening in. We appreciate all of our volunteers that do our many design requests. And there's a QR code for that organizing toolkit as well.
I just want to say that, you know, we launched a new website very recently, and it's so far working very well, a lot better than our old website, but we are making certain tweaks. For example, I'm realizing right now we should have under resources our toolkit. So these will be much more readily available starting tomorrow. But in the meantime, there's a link to the Google Doc that shows this very important organizing toolkit.
And one of the things that's on there is that we are here for you. Coco and I are part of the national team, and we, you know, want to hear your questions, your ideas, your efforts, updates on your efforts. We want to hear it all. So in the toolkit, there is our way to email the national team, phone number. The phone number does accept text, so feel free to text if that's more up your alley.
So if you are not someone who maybe feels comfortable opening, starting a chapter in your area, but you want to get involved, you want to help with this. This is a national organization. It's a national movement. There are lots of different ways. We have a lot of needs for different skills, different, actions that people can take to help us to lead the thousands that are going to call in the millions. So I want to urge you, if you are in that camp, to text volunteer at this number or sign up with this QR code. Tell us what you are interested. It'll take you to a little questionnaire. Tell us what you are interested in helping with. Do you want to help on a press team? Do you want to design some things for digital use, be part of an art and design team? Do you want to phone bank and do fundraising? Or do you want to be part of logistics and administrative work? I'll tell you a story of a recent volunteer who works in the entertainment industry and helped develop forms for really carrying out the 4 days of protests and actions that we did in DC July 4th week, and it was a huge help. So you might think, I don't know really what my skills are, and you might be surprised how much you can actually contribute. So if you are someone who wants to help on the national level, please volunteer here and let us know what you would like, what you are interested in helping with.
Wonderful. And I know that people want more resources to spread these demands. And one of the ways to do that is with stickers, with hats, with, wearing the shirts that Coco was mentioning, earlier. If a bunch of people showed up to live audience recordings and had shows that had t-shirts, that said Trump must go now on them. These are the t-shirts. So you can go to the website, you can go to the shop, and you can get materials to wear for your whole, you want your whole group at work to wear them one day. Maybe it's an every Friday thing. You're going to wear your Trump must go now t-shirt to work. Y'all are creative. So think of something, get back to us with it. And I want to see if we can bring, I'm going to stop my share, see if we can bring Sunsara back in. And if you had any issues with any QR codes, there are links in the chat for just about everything. So be sure to check there.
Hi.
Hey, Sunsara. Let's see if we can make you bigger. Let's see. Add spotlight. There we go.
Okay.
So we have had some pretty great questions that I was thinking we could get into.
Yeah, I've been sort of doing my best to answer some of them in the background, and there's one that keeps every time we do an event, a teach-in, anything, it always comes up. So maybe I will just try to speak to that really quick. I mean, there's a bunch of them that have, but I'll start with one and then maybe you can pick out others. Including if there's anything that you see in the answered bin that you think would be good to bring up for the whole group, but you may have other ideas. I was gonna say, somebody says, how do we reach the Trumpers? How do we get through to them? The people who are convinced, but I don't, let me read the way they put it so I do it justice. They said, how do we talk to people who are on the other side of this? White supremacists, cis hetero white men who denounce LGBT, etc., in a way to bring them into our ranks, when they try to debunk any facts or evidence you provide. Example, false claim that LGBT is a choice, but who ignore when you mention its prevalence in ancient societies. I wrote an answer, but I want to share it. Look, our strategy is not to try to win over the Trumpers, to try to penetrate the critical, thought-resistant mind warp that they have been brought into. It is a look, they are cult-like in their unthinking obedience to what Trump says and does, and what Fox News reinforces, and what a lot of the fundamentalist fanatical preachers also reinforce. And they literally, their criteria for what's true is what Trump says and does. Their criteria for what's moral is what he does and says. Their criteria for who's lying is who Trump says is lying, you know. And if that's your criteria, you're not going to be very easy to penetrate. Exactly like the questioner says, you marshal facts, they say no, I don't regard your facts, those are fake facts, fake news, whatever. What we are trying to do is we recognize there are tens of millions of people in this country who hate what Trump is doing. Tens of millions, the majority of this country, and we've seen millions and millions of them in the streets. Our whole webinar tonight, and a key part of our strategy that we've been discussing, is to reach those millions who want to not live in Trump's future, and compel them and propel them and inspire them and model for them and struggle with them in ways that move them to act as a force that stops this fascism and unseats the regime. That's the force we need to argue with. That's the force we need. Those are thinking people. Not a lot of them not thinking enough, not critically thinking enough. Many of them are going to have a lot of excuses. Oh, yeah, you're right, but I've got something else to do this weekend. Oh, yeah, you're right, but it's got to be somebody else. I've got this commitment. I've got this other thing I'm working on. You know, if you had a hurricane coming to your beachfront property, you wouldn't say, yeah, weather guy, yeah, there's a hurricane coming, but I've got plans this weekend. You would rearrange everything. You would get out of there, you know. And we've got to convince the decent people in this country that you've got to act like the emergency it is. We're not trying to go to those who don't believe hurricanes are real. You know, we're not trying to go to those who think Trump is doing a great job and they're white supremacists and they hate gay people. I'm not saying that none of them could ever be broken free of that, but that's not our strategy. Is not to win them over. Our strategy is to stop them from controlling the future. And to do that, we have to go to the millions who care, and we have to argue with our friends. We have to argue with the decent people. It matters what you've done, but it doesn't matter enough. And, you know, there's no satisfaction. We don't look back on the people in Nazi Germany who felt bad about what was happening and protested here and there and say, well, it's really understandable. We look back and say, no, you needed to have done more. And that's where we are at now. That's what Alfonso was talking about. This is akin to Nazi Germany. People are being disappeared today. They're being put in concentration camps today. We need the people who lose sleep at night over that to start acting differently. And that's what we have to model and call them into in a big way. And starting on the 26th in Los Angeles, there's a march, but also on the 28th, these noise demonstrations to disrupt business as usual. And we need a lot of other ideas that you guys help generate and carry out, that get out there and change the compass and the standard for what other people start to measure themselves against and start to act on.
Thanks, Sunsara. One thing that I want to do is I want to stop for a minute and just comment on how many more actions people are sharing in the chat. And, you know, I think that some of them are just people deciding on them now. And so I'm looking and seeing Honolulu Noon, gather in front of Restaurant Row at Punch Bowl. I'm seeing, I'm seeing Seattle, noon at the Federal Building. I'm seeing Philly, 1 p.m. at the ICE office at 8th and Arch. And more coming in. So please, you know, please continue to share what you're coming up with. You know, one thing you could do right now is, you know, put a thumbs up in the chat if you're going to join in action on July 28th. Put a thumbs up in the chat if you're going to join an action. Put 2 thumbs up if you think you're going to host one. And I want to give, while people do that, I want to give people an update and give people a shout out on fundraising. I want to say, first of all, we well exceeded the $500 match. So thank you to everyone who gave, and a particular thank you to Alfonso Morales from LA for giving 500 to help us meet that match right away. And so all of it is a, how do you give a thumbs up? There's a little icon with a smiley face, and then you'll get a thumb. But I'm going to take it as, you can just write thumbs up if you can't figure it out too. That works too. So right now we're at 1,755 total, and we need to keep giving, to keep fundraising, to keep growing, so that we can really make this a force. Make this a force in, yes, in LA, yes, in the cities that you're all from, but really making this a nationwide movement that is growing and not stopping until this regime is removed from power. And I wanted to say, let's see if there was any other news.
Somebody said, while you look, somebody said, a lot of people have responded to my point about not appealing to the Trumpers. Some people have said, look, how do you talk to them if they're family members? That's worth doing. Those are people in your life. Maybe it's worth doing. You have to decide that. I'm not telling you to cut them off. Some people do need to be cut off. That's a choice you're going to have to make. But as a strategy, and we're not here to counsel people in their personal conduct, in their personal lives and families. That's not our place to do that. But we're saying as a strategy for how to defeat Trump MAGA fascism, to prevent them from controlling the future. That strategy requires that the regime have its hands pried from the levers of power. We're not out here to just win over hearts and minds and who cares where the future goes. We're out to change the future. And frankly, through the mass struggle, that's how most people will get their hearts and minds changed who are on the wrong side. I will tell one story. During the George Floyd uprising, at its high tide, there was a mass phenomenon when there were millions in the streets protesting, resisting, saying Black Lives Matter, putting their bodies on the line, facing down rubber bullets and tear gas and all the rest, and brutal assault by police, and coming out again and again and again in the face of Trump and his military Black Hawk helicopters and all their threats. Tattoo parlors in the South, and it was not just one or two, it was a phenomenon, opened up and said, we will for free remove Confederate flag tattoos. We will for free remove white pride tattoos. And there was a lot of people, white people, who went in to get their tattoos removed, who had never been compelled to think about it before. The struggle is what pried their eyes open. And I read interviews with some of these people who said, one of them had a 4-year-old child and said, I never really thought about what the Confederate flag meant. He never had to. He lived in a white society, white supremacist inculcated culture and society where that was like just the air he breathed. And he never had it challenged. When he had it challenged, he said, I don't want my kid to grow up thinking this is who his dad was. And he got his tattoo removed. And these parlors opened it up for free. And I could go through examples in the civil rights movement, through the women's liberation movement, through the anti-Vietnam War movement, where people had their minds changed because of the struggle that was waged on a societal level, where they were compelled to start thinking about things they'd never had to think about before. And they said, what do those people know and understand that makes them feel so strongly they will put themselves on the line and they will not stop? What do they understand that I don't understand? And some people double down in their backwardsness and their bigotry, and some people open up and say, what's that about? And they come forward. That we need. And somebody else raised, there's some people who used to be Trump supporters who have gotten disaffected by Trump and come around. We have to have wide open arms and welcome them in. My point is not to say, F you could never do right. My point is we don't have time. And our strategy is not to win every individual over. Our strategy is to change the course of history. That will also have the biggest effect on all the individuals who are on the wrong side, but it'll have an even bigger effect and a more meaningful effect on all those who are in the line of fire of this regime, who are under the gun of this regime, whose lives are being shattered by it, and the millions more who will be, if we do not move the decent people who are there, who care, who already have the raw material but are not acting the ways they need to act. We have to model that kind of action, and we have to struggle with them. The elections are too late. The courts will not stop it. The Democrats will not do this for you. There is nobody else but you and me and people like us, and we have to act now. If we want them to act, we have to act. And so that's where our struggle is focused, and everybody's welcome. And if you weren't here yesterday, come on in today and learn as you go, and we'll learn from each other, and there's plenty of space for that. We need that. But we have to be laser focused, eye on the prize. Trump must go now.
Thanks, Sunsara. I think that this is really essential orientation as the clock is ticking and lives are already being jeopardized. And there's an important question that I think is another one of those gets asked again and again, and I think is worth being our last question for tonight. And those questions that didn't get answered, keep sending them in, because this is not a done deal. We might be able to answer it through our social media or on our website or through future programming. So please continue to ask those questions. This question, I'm going to paraphrase it a bit. Even if refused fascism gets 1 million people in sustained resistance, I don't see this regime leaving office or Trump resigning or Project 2025 being defeated. And I'm gonna end the question there, and as it was written, and I'm gonna ask it in a way that comes up a lot of times. Okay, I get you resist, you don't comply, you do it again and again. How do they go?
Well,
so Coco, if you want to jump in too.
Look, I think, one, there does have to be the demand that the Trump regime has to go, and there does have to be millions of people in the streets, not just one day, but over and over again, not conceding, not backing down until the demand is met. Imagine how difficult it would be for him to govern with that going on. And talk about the loss of legitimacy in the eyes of the world if there are millions of people in the streets going day after day and saying, we will not accept this regime in power. And, approval ratings aside, I am looking at the rest of the question. Approval ratings are where, going back to the, this idea that you're going to win this by winning over those Trump supporters. And I think Sunsara made a very compelling case that we don't have time for that. And those people are going to be won over when their movement is defeated, some of them. If we look back at Nazi Germany, would we say, well, there was nothing people could do. The decent people, it was right for the decent people to do nothing because Hitler had a high approval rating. And, what could you do? It's what the German people wanted. That's what they're saying now, that this is what the American people want, which is not true. There are two countries in this country. One is a country that cares about diversity, that cares about justice. And another is a country that is right now a very hardened base of a fascist movement, a fascist regime with genocidal lunacy, in its trajectory, in its roundup of these immigrants and delighting in alligator Alcatraz. So, I think there's, Sunsara or Sam may want to say more about how that actually happens, in terms of the political crisis that causes. What then do the people at the top, the rulers, have to calculate? How did this happen in South Korea, where it was the same dynamic? Egypt, Puerto Rico, the world is full of these examples of people taking to the streets day after day, not backing down, demanding the removal of the regime, and the regime cannot hold on to power. So I think, it's a hard, you know, outlook to change, but I think we do have to really challenge ourselves to start seeing the country of decent people and what the role, the responsibility, and the power of that part of the country is. So I'll stop there.
I'll just add that no positive change for the people, no dismantling of structural injustice in society has ever come about without people going outside the normal channels of electoral politics, politics as usual, and what seems politically realistic and possible in that moment. The politics of the possible. This is a quote from Bob Avakian. He said it years ago. The politics of the possible is the politics of monstrosity. If you restrict yourself to what seems politically possible as the rulers of the society and the normal functioning of it presents itself, you are accepting and accommodating to the politics of atrocity. And we see that very vividly today. And that's why did people do this freedom ride? The freedom rides, I should say, plural, and the freedom summer and the civil rights movement. Why did people walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge? Because they wanted to make what was politically impossible possible, because they refused to accept a world and they refused to make peace with the world and find their place in a world where Black people were openly terrorized, subjugated, and lynched routinely. And you could go down the list. The same with the LGBTQ movements. The same with what had happened against the Vietnam War. You could go down the list. The way that women won the right to abortion. This was not by sitting back and calculating political possibilities. People got out of bounds and they changed what was possible. And until, look, every major social cataclysm, and they say this about revolutions, but also in times when regimes are unseated short of revolution, they say it always looks impossible the day before it happens. And the day after, everybody says, well, that was inevitable, because it seems so clear how many people were in motion demanding it. And so I just want to say, if we start with what seems realistic and possible, we are giving up the future, and it is unacceptable. And I don't just say that because, like, let's believe the impossible. Alice in Wonderland. I think about 6 impossible things every morning before breakfast. I'm not saying impossible really. I'm saying impossible according to politics as usual, but eminently possible in the material world if you look at the millions who do not want this. And there were thousands, and there actually were millions who got involved in different ways to win civil rights and dismantle Jim Crow. There were millions who got involved in the struggle against the Vietnam War. Each of them did, Nixon had to withdraw the troops from Vietnam. He was a warmonger. That's not what he wanted to do. He wanted to escalate and threaten nuclear war against the North Vietnamese. He was forced by the actions of the people to calculate differently. He was actually compelled to leave power prematurely because of the overall crisis in society that was not just from the people, but largely by the uprising of the people, combining with contradictions among the rulers and the institutions themselves. And I will say today, there are unseating a fascist regime is a whole different order of struggle and challenge than even stopping the Vietnam War or dismantling Jim Crow or any of the other struggles that I'm describing. But it is more possible today because there are more people being shocked and jolted and whose sense of what's decent and right is being violated in society and in the ruling institutions. And when you have a situation where Trump is calling Reagan appointed judges lunatic Marxists and communists and creating an atmosphere where they are getting death threats, and he's talking about impeaching them because he doesn't like the way they rule. When you have a situation where the military generals are being purged of Black and women leaders, and Harriet Tubman is being removed, and Confederate generals are being re-enshrined as the names of the bases, you don't think you have a lot of dissension within the military? You don't think you have a lot of dissension within the court system? You don't think you have a lot of people within every institution of government, of society, who are deeply divided over this. If there was a struggle from below, there are a lot of splits that could open up in these institutions, and a lot of people who could act in ways that seem impossible today, but could come to the fore if there was a massive, sustained, unrelenting pressure from below. And we don't know exactly how it'll play out, but there is it is 100% realistic and possible. Guaranteed? No. Guaranteed? No. But absolutely possible. And what is guaranteed is if we sit back and wait for politics as usual, we will be swallowed by a nightmare and a horror. Not just us, but immigrants, Black people, trans people, women, and people all over the world whose lives are being destroyed by this regime already, and the whole climate destruction they are accelerating. If the guarantee is if we do not oust this regime, it will be a nightmare beyond what most people can imagine.
Thank you, Sunsara, for that. It's with that we need to go forward. It's with that spirit that we need to go forward, with that understanding that we need to go forward, because there can be no business as usual when this fascist regime is consolidating. When that's the business as usual is fascist consolidation, we can't just go along. We need to demand shut down ICE, no military occupation, shut down the whole Trump fascist regime. And we're doing this, for those who are newer, we're doing this in the name of humanity, not just for ourselves, not just for our people, but for all of humanity that's imperiled by this. And we're refusing it. We're not accommodating to it. We're not adjusting to it. We're stopping it. And we're going to be calling forth more people to join in this mass noncompliance, in this mass nonviolent resistance on July 28th, on July 26th in LA and elsewhere. And there's links for you to take the next step into this movement in the chat. So please go there and connect with us. There's many ways to connect with us. Go to refusefascism.org and you'll find all of those ways, including, I know some people had asked about finding whether there's local organizers near them. You can find that on the website as well. And I want to end with the Mario Savio quote that Sunsara mentioned earlier, actually being delivered by Mario Savio. Not that Sunsara didn't do it beautifully, but it is something to hear it, to hear it live. So I wanted to end there, and I wanted to thank everyone for sharing such thoughtful comments. And again, if we didn't get to your question, it's not the end. There will be more things, and continue to put in, if you're planning events, put that in the chat as well.
When the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
And that's what we've got to do, beautiful people. So thank you. Thank you for joining, and thank you, Sunsara, and thank you, Coco, and thank you, Alfonso, and thank you, Deborah, for the behind the scenes support. And we will be sharing.
And thank you, Sam.
Oh, and we will be sharing with y'all. I know people ask for recording. If you were participating in this, you're going to get a follow-up email, and it's going to have the link to the recording so you can share with others. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing all that you do. Make sure to tag us in whatever you're doing at Refuse Fascism. Take care. Let's see.